All right, I have Ben Satterfield here with me today. Ben, I really appreciate you taking the time. Very intrigued about your company, TestFlight, which you have co-founded and are the CEO of. Very hot company. A lot of folks in the tech industry know about it. Hoping to open up a few eyes and ears to people outside of the app world as to what you guys are doing. If you don't mind, as a way of introduction, just tell us, why does the world need TestFlight?
So the world has told us that they needed test flight. We developed it for ourselves, and we didn't know it. But at the time, we all had this headache, and we had no idea that we were making basically Excedrin and then giving it out to people. So
Nice.
it's been necessary because what TestFlight does in a nutshell is we do simple, elegant, over-the-air distribution of apps. These are apps that are in development and haven't been released in the App Store yet. So it's a difficult situation to be in, where if you're making an app for somebody, or you need to show your investor or your client or even just your testers, the rest of your team, it was so difficult to get that project onto people's devices.
Right.
And TestFlight is really a very painless, frictionless way of doing that.
Well, it's interesting you use the analogy of Excedrin. I always tell my students, "What's your painkiller?" So you must have been
Right.
eavesdropping. And it's especially interesting that someone earning their master's degree in Chinese medicine would use such a Western drug. I'm kind of disappointed. I thought you would. Maybe you could have said we were developing the acupuncture for the app
I
world.
should I should have said aspirin, because at least that's a little bit more naturally derived. The reason I chose Excedrin is because of the extra strength association
Of
with that.
course, of course, it's the bigger
It's a
pill.
polite way. It's a polite way of addressing the headache more than the medicine.
But we prefer
Uh,
the acupuncture. How does someone go from studying Chinese medicine at the level that you studied it to starting an internet company?
that is a very long story, but I'll give you the short version, which is I was able to, during my master's degree, I've been doing pre-med and going that route. Wanted to go into alternative medicine. And on the side, I was doing things like design and building websites, and mostly doing print stuff before then, and Photoshop, and sort of like it became this passion. And I was really excited about what I thought would be the future of mobile. By the way, at the time, this is back going to like Palm
Oh yeah.
Pilot days. So to me, I was excited about information. I had dropped out of school to do my first startup, which is Root Down, which is basically getting involved in database and collecting and building out databases for national board, California board. So I was able to take a bunch of different passions and interests and unite them for one goal, and I was hooked, because what I really loved was towards initiating startups is about constant learning and demand on learning.
Right.
And I didn't want to be a student of just one subject anymore, which is what a graduate degree will encourage you to do, and probably should do. But for me, it was, wait, I want to dedicate my life, or this giant chunk of my life next upcoming, to be about learning, about problem solving, about not knowing what tomorrow is and being part of that change. Um, there's absolutely no preparation in traditional Chinese medicine in the graduate school for doing a startup, but I think what it enabled me to do was to um, allow me to see intersection points, to take different ideas and combine them. And I actually think that that's a big genesis of how TestFlight began, and encouraging and finding people that I work with, like Tristan, our CTO, to encourage him to kind of be this Renaissance thinker, and find these intersection points. One thing that you're taught in the grad school for at least traditional Chinese medicine is to pattern diagnosis, and it's really funny because we in development world, it's always about patterns, identifying patterns, working with patterns, and so it's. I actually think that having that observation skill, at least from a management level, was helpful to doing startups, multiple startups.
Yep, I agree. No, the same with venture capital. We end up becoming pattern matchers, whether we
Right.
want to admit it or not. That's essentially what we are. Some of us are better at it than others, but that's what we do. Well, I appreciate that background. I always thought the Chinese medicine's interesting. There's probably a lot more there that you're bringing to the startup that's more sort of behind the scenes.
Right.
You're right about graduate school and beyond. You learn more and more about less and less, and you become
Right.
such an expert that sometimes you wake up and wow, I know a lot about a little. But so I noticed on your front door of your website, just testflight.com, you talk about you basically give a shout out to Apple and you say, hey, thanks for making the magic possible. So
Yeah.
there's obviously a love affair there, but I think with every love affair, there's the risk of rejection. So what steps have you guys taken?
Oh boy. Yeah.
It's better to have loved than to have lost. We all get that, but
Yeah. Yes.
it's also good to be safe.
So I think part of that was about a little bit of disclaimer saying, hey, Apple, we know we're doing stuff that's probably seeming a little bit in the gray area here, but we love you. So don't come and kill us right now. And people were saying that TestFlight is a magical experience. And it was funny because the word magical, people were saying it was overused to describe the iPad or maybe the iPhone 4. But I actually think it's a perfect word to describe these devices because it brings this sense of wonder and like, wow, how did that happen? So we love that about Apple. Obviously, they've given us all the tools. iOS 4 and beyond enabled TestFlight to be what it is.
Right.
So it was an acknowledgement of saying we didn't create all of this on our own. I mean, this is just, we're using a tool in a way that wasn't predicted. I think that goes back to just our team having a sense of experimenting and trying new things constantly, thinking outside of the box a little bit, and it really pays off with TestFlight, and it's helped a lot of other companies. So how to deal with rejection? The good news is we're still active, and we haven't been shut down, and we're not breaking any rules. We're not even bending any rules. It's just we're using tools in a completely different way, and it is legitimate. And I had legal go through it, and now in that last interview I did, I actually mentioned that we're in a very new game as entrepreneurs, and I think whether you're doing apps on Facebook or apps on Android or apps on iOS, you're playing now by somebody else's rules. It's a different game altogether. And you have to consider that they can come and turn you off.
Right.
We're confident that we're diplomatic enough. We're not trying to break rules for the sake of breaking rules. We really want to provide a service that meets a need. Apple artificially has created the need. It's kind of like this irony, right? Like they created the tools to solve it, and they also created the need for it. So it is this little bit of a dance that we're doing, but I think we have a good rapport with each other right now. We also don't have a native app out in the store, and people have been asking why, when it's going to come. The simple answer is we actually don't need it. We get like 98% of what we want out of our service without having a native app. So it's kind of strange that TestFlight is all about mobile apps, and yet we have nothing. We have no mobile app. So it's kind of like this perfect watermark of where we are right now. It's web services showing a lot of value, or we're dealing with mobile clients or apps. So we are. I really feel like it's a perfect bridge right now in terms of history.
And I think your relationship with Apple should remain strong. You're adding value to the ecosystem. You're certainly not taking anything away from what they're doing, and you're making it easier for people to succeed in their ecosystem. So I think that's
right.
That's good for everyone.
I mean, I personally know that a lot of people who do work with Apple or at Apple have off the record said, given us thanks for doing that. Now, and that's really in perspective of over-the-air distribution, and that's not really all that TestFlight's about. It's just it's the pain relief. It's the what's sexy in iOS, but it's just the beginning of what we are, and I think it's a great start.
Yep, I'm going to ask you a little bit about that in a second, but just segueing from your love affair with Apple to Google, what is your value prop? How extensible is it into the Droid market? What are your thoughts in general on that market and TestFlight's role?
Yeah, that's a great question. So officially, we haven't announced support for Android apps. It's not something we're not against it, but we feel like before we were to go down that route, we need to do a fine evaluation of what is most important to the Android developers and what their unique pain points are. Over-the-air distribution is not sexy to them, right? It's not. It's just like, well, I can just put my app in a Dropbox, copy the link, and email it to all my people. So even at its basic form, TestFlight still is valuable because you can manage teams. You can see if they open the email. You can see if they install the app. We just recently announced our SDK for iOS, and that's in beta right now. I think going that route and having deeper insight and having that in the future of Android could be more interesting. I think if we just look at the pain point of Android, the real pain point of Android is fragmentation and testing. Well, TestFlight's in that world. We're not there as much as we want to right now, and I'm not making any announcements on that and how we deal with it specifically, but I want to focus more on dealing with that issue rather than just over-the-air distribution and management and collecting feedback and all the things that we're starting now. That all applies to Android, but there's no like, wow. We have to add the wow factor to Android, and I believe that's going to come with giving insight into, and by insight, I mean showing causality or offering something that's like, we want to do your homework for you. I think that's like a slogan that I use around the office a lot. It's like, we want to do the homework for you because nobody wants to do the homework. They just want to concentrate what they like to do and then move on. So we want to enable devs to focus on what they're best at, which is building the apps. If you look at Android, Google's really good about supplying data and dumping information on you, but what do you do with that? And I want to deal with that in an intelligent way, in a helpful way to developers of, what if you had insight into, hey, before you release, your testers haven't done a thorough job. And to show that, graphically in an elegant, simple way, that gives you a heads up, like, there's all these different devices, all these different OSs. What have we touched on in the development process? So we're thinking about these things. We don't have a definitive solution. I think it's probably a logical progression. No one would be surprised if we did, but I want to do it in the right way. Just like we could have released TestFlight as a quick hack or a quick open source solution, we really want to develop into a service and ultimately a company that can support these initiatives.